For a whole year, their lives were bound by paper, money, and a fragile lie. Ethan Blackwell had everything once, an empire of glass towers, fast cars, and the kind of fortune people whispered about. But a terrible accident left the arrogant young millionaire in a wheelchair, bitter, reclusive, and convinced no woman could ever love him for who he was, only for what he owned. His pride was shattered, his heart locked away, until one desperate decision changed everything. She was Amelia Hart, a poor but gentle soul, working 3 jobs just to survive. Lonely, invisible, and weighed down by life's cruelty, she never imagined her path would cross with his. But when Ethan offered her a shocking proposition, marry him for 1 year in exchange for financial security, Amelia couldn't refuse. She thought it would be nothing more than a cold arrangement, a contract written in ink and indifference. But here's the thing about love. It creeps in when you least expect it. Between the arguments and the awkward silences, something real began to stir. The way she saw him, not as a broken man, but as someone still worthy of love, started to thaw the ice around his heart. And the way he began to protect her, cherish her, left Amelia questioning if the line between pretend and forever had already been crossed. Neither of them knew it then, but that 1-year deal was about to change everything. Now let's dive right in. Night poured over the city like ink, turning glass towers into mirrors and making every window its own star. In one of those towers, in a penthouse, Ethan Blackwell spun the wheel of his chair with his left hand. Marble held the chill. A piano waited the way unanswered questions do. Along the walls, photographs from before the accident kept his younger self framed and permanent. Wind in his hair, sunlight in his eyes, motion the language of his body, the world still obeying him. He listened to the city from behind glass. An engine idled, impatient. A horn stitched a red seam across traffic. In the next building over, someone drew shade and cut a room in half. He could measure the distance between effort and outcome now. How far a glance traveled before it returned empty. How long a polite smile lasted before it slipped. The quiet in the penthouse felt curated, a museum of recently surviving things. The chair had become a tool, then a fact, then an argument he no longer wanted to have. He could lift himself cleanly into bed now, pivot with an economy that would have impressed the version of him that used to turn speed into victory and freedom into a weather system. Still, small humiliations remained. A pen skittering off the desk, a door closer that pretended to be helpful and wasn't, the shape pity made out of other people's mouths. He had never been afraid of work. He had not prepared for the work to be himself. On the credenza, a black folder waited like a dare. He didn't open it. He knew what it held. Renderings for the riverfront tower, a construction schedule drawn tight as a drum, and the latest letter from aboard. The phrases were smooth, the font considerate. Investor optics, narrative stability, public confidence. In the meeting that birthed those words, a senior partner had angled his smile like a sterile scalpel. Family steadies narrative, he'd said. A domestic arrangement would reassure the market. Insult had flared in Ethan first. Temptation came after, colder and more organized. He hated that it came at all. He rolled to the piano and placed his fingers on the keys, feeling the promise of action as a kind of absence. The accident had rearranged him. It took motion from his legs and noise from his certainty. The last woman he loved had left in a hallway where the lights hummed, and the choices were both terrible. "I don't recognize you," she said softly, and he had nodded, as if permission could make the doors closing less final. Across town, where neon surrendered to brick and rust, and the city settled into the work of enduring, Amelia Hart knelt on a diner kitchen floor with a sponge and a bowl of lemon water. Grease clung to grout like gossip. Her hands chased it out 1 inch at a time. Chairs stood upside down on tables like exhausted birds. The radio in the back argued with static and lost politely. She hummed anyway, because the day felt better when sound came from her. In the glass door, she saw a woman people liked because she made them feel a little more possible. Hair gathered back with an elastic that kept its promises, sweater with a mended elbow she kept forgetting to hide, eyes that paid attention. Customers told her she had a soothing way. She thought they meant she didn't make a show of how hard they were trying. Kindness could be practical that way. Her tote bag held envelopes with stern faces. Rent past due. A hospital bill for her mother, who slept 2 neighborhoods over with a cough that came and when the way tides disobey clocks. A notice from the community college she left when nights turned into emergency rooms and breakfast turned into coffee and intention. She used to write her dreams on scraps of paper and tape them to mirrors. Lately, she wrote reminders on the backs of receipts. Buy milk, call clinic, return Mrs. Alvarez's Tupperware. She locked the diner and stepped into air that had the metallic promise of rain. Her shoes were wrong for puddles. She navigated the broken places the way locals do, stepping sill to sill across small darknesses. Her phone buzzed. The downstairs neighbor had news and the tone that came with it. The landlord was finished being patient. She typed a thank you that sounded braver than it felt, and put the phone away fast, as if the message could bite. The bus stop offered a splintered bench and a billboard that used to sell perfume before it surrendered to peeling paper. Amelia sat, because sitting didn't cost anything, under a temperamental street lamp. A couple argued softly under a single umbrella, their shadows negotiating in wider gestures than their voices allowed. A stray dog trotted by like he had an appointment to keep. The bus announced itself 3 blocks out by whining to the air. She had learned how to wait without breaking. Ethan stretched the night until the work ended of its own accord. He studied numbers because numbers didn't reach for his hand and then pretend they hadn't. Revenue steady. Sentiment soft. Lawsuits expensive but survivable. The riverfront schedule in open conflict with politics. He edited a public statement twice and then deleted it because both versions sounded like Hope trying to borrow a suit. He let his mother's call drift into voicemail and sat with a kind of silence that didn't ask questions. The board's suggestion returned the way bad music does, catchy and stubborn. A year, the strategist had said. Enough for optics. A discreet agreement protects both parties. Marry not for love, but for symmetry. He had wanted to throw the idea back across the table, shatter it on the edge, and leave. Instead, he brought it home and let it sit. He told himself that sleeping on a decision made it wiser. Sleep outwardly arrived and inwardly refused to negotiate. The bus arrived late and mostly empty. Amelia chose a window and leaned her temple against glass that remembered how to cool forehead. A painter slept 2 seats down with his backpack for a pillow. A waitress in a sequined dress counted quarters as if she was trying to fix a constellation. The driver conducted the city with 2 hands and a patience most composers never mastered. Lights smudged into a ribbon behind them. She made a list in her head. Wash apron. Call mom. Pay something. Look for more work even if the pay was mostly gratitude. The hallway to her apartment smelled like boiled cabbage and laundry soap and the stubbornness of old buildings. Outside 2B, a plate of empanadas waited under foil with a note in thick pen. Eat mija. No argue. Mrs. Alvarez curated kindness like it could fend off weather. Amelia warmed the food, texted thanks in careful Spanish, and sat on the couch with a one honest cushion. She ate slowly because hurrying had never made anything last. Her laptop woke like a reluctant animal. The screen pushed back the dark in a rectangle the size of possibility. She scrolled through listings, overnight clerk, weekends only, mystery shopper, please have a car. She applied because habit could wear a path where feet didn't yet know how to go. One subject line hooked her eyes, confidential domestic agreement, companionship/household management, 1-year term. The sender's domain was plain. The message wore politeness like armor. It asked for discretion, empathy, resilience. It offered housing, compensation, and explicitly no intimate obligations. It promised an interview with an intermediary if she signed a standard NDA. Her sense for trouble stayed present, but the grammar was clean and the tone didn't try to hurry her. The timing felt like a dare she might finally want to accept. She thought about rent and medicine and the way exhaustion makes the world look narrower than it is. She thought about the ring in the dish by her bed, her mother's, simple and bright. She thought about the pharmacy aisle where she had once chosen antibiotics over groceries because hunger could wait and infection wouldn't. She signed the NDA and wrote a brief reply. She pressed send while her courage still felt like a verb. Ethan sent a message to his counsel that contained only direction. Proceed to first interviews. Then he rolled to the balcony and unlatched the door. Rain tapped the rail like someone who trusted their welcome. The skyline glowed through weather as if it learned light from within. Somewhere below, a stranger might be deciding whether to say yes to a proposal he wished he didn't have to make. The possibility felt like oxygen. He resented it for that and wanted more of it anyway. Amelia rinsed her plate and left it standing in a rack like a small silver monument to completion. The pot hose in the corner trailed faithful green. She surprised herself by whispering to it, "Let something good find me," and then surprised herself again by not being embarrassed. Her phone vibrated. A second email had arrived. Interview time, address, instructions that respected rather than controlled. Bring ID, or what felt like you. Expect conversation, not signatures. The address belonged to a building she had passed many times. Wide steps, marble lobby, air that pretended Monday was a choice. She printed the email and slid it beneath a tulip magnet on the fridge. She counted the hours on her fingers. She chose the blue dress because it made her feel like the version of herself that knew how to begin. She braided her hair because her hands needed work for the morning, something precise and quietly brave. She told nobody. Hope prefers the private room. Dawn found Ethan awake and unwilling to call it insomnia. He treated morning like a contract. Arrive, attempt, sign where conscience required. Coffee, physical therapy, a shower that measured progress and patience rather than pain. When his tie refused clean obedience, he recognized the part of himself that had once turned defiance into a sport. He wore it crooked and decided he preferred intention to performance. He tried to imagine the stranger who might sit across from him and ask who he was when the headlines fell away. He did not know if she existed. He did not know if he deserved her if she did. He knew only that the story the world told about him. Accident, fortune, rumored frost. Needed a counterpoint that was neither pity nor spectacle. He had built towers because he liked transparency dared to the sky. Perhaps he could build a private thing without lying to it. The lobby pulled Amelia's breath out of her with its shine. Stone gleamed like a yes that had learned manners. The security guard smile was either real or professional. Either way, it worked. The elevator cleared its throat in the shaft. She pressed the button and watched her reflection gather and scatter. "You can do this," she told the reflection. It nodded as if it knew something she hadn't learned yet. On the 27th floor, a woman with silver hair and a fog-colored suit shook Amelia's hand with measured warmth. "Ms. Hart," she said, "I'm Miriam. Thank you for coming." The conference room could almost pass for a cloud. Windows observed the river moving its patient freight. 2 chairs stood on thick carpet. A tray of water and a tissue box declared themselves prepared for any version of the morning. Miriam began the way surgeons do, with clarity. You signed the NDA. Thank you. I represent a client who values discretion. He seeks a one-year domestic partnership for reasons both pragmatic and personal. The arrangement includes residence in a private wing, a monthly stipend, full health coverage, and shielding from public attention. There are no physical requirements. Your autonomy is absolute outside of scheduled appearances. The role asks for patience, calm, humor, and a willingness to be seen without letting the scene consume you. Amelia held the water with both hands to convince them they were occupied. Why me? She asked carefully, keeping curiosity from becoming need. Your references are unusually consistent, Miriam said, kind without being naive. Invisible when necessary, visible when it matters. No public social media beyond private photographs of clouds. You work 3 jobs and still return your neighbor's containers. You didn't pawn your mother's ring. These impressed my client. The ring steadied her imagination. She saw it where it lived, in a little dish near the bed like a bright vow. Who is he, she asked. If you agree to meet, you'll know his name, Miriam said. Consider the offer without the glare that comes with it. Amelia turned toward the river. Barges slipped by like sentences that knew where they were going. Somewhere below, a ship horn sounded, low and unconcerned. She tried on a future in which she said yes, and one in which she said no. Both felt like new shoes, promising, pinching. What happens if feelings get involved? She asked, surprising herself with the honesty of it. Agreements cannot prevent being human, Miriam said. They can only protect people trying to be. Silence rose and settled. Words landed and stayed. Miriam closed the folder as if to mark a difference between paperwork and life. One more question, not covered by documents. When life offers a door you didn't ask for, do you step through or hold the frame and watch it close? Amelia set the glass down without sound. I stepped through, she said, and the truth of it traveled through her like heat. Miriam slid a simple card across the table. It held a time, a floor, and a promise that felt like a safety rail. No obligation after conversation. Tomorrow, she said. Same building, different view. If you're willing. I'm willing, Amelia said. The words felt fragile and muscular once. Outside, rain paused on the ledge, listening as if weather, too, waited to hear her say yes at last. Across the city, Ethan completed a second set of exercises and finally allowed himself to touch his phone. A message from Miriam waited. Candidate interviewed. Recommendation. Proceed. He read it twice and then a third time. Not because comprehension lagged, but because wanting had entered the room and he hadn't yet decided how to greet it. Night idled outside by the time both of them were home. 2 lives traced separate routes toward a single intersection neither could yet name. Between elevator chimes and bus brakes, between piano keys and diner floors, something contractual and uncontainable hovered, waiting to be written down and then immediately resisted by whatever the heart decides is necessary. By morning, one question would stand between them and a year that would test every story they told themselves. When a contract pretends it can keep love out, who do you become when love refuses to listen? Morning scattered itself across the city, pale and hesitant, painting rooftops with light that didn't yet promise warmth. Amelia tied the last knot in her braid with hands that wouldn't stop trembling. The blue dress hung loose on her frame, but it made her feel a little braver, a little less like someone the world forgot. She pressed her mother's ring into her palm for courage, slipped it onto her finger, and whispered to herself. Just a meeting. Nothing more. The bus smelled of coffee spilled long ago and newspapers folded into resignation. Amelia sat near the back, clutching her tote bag with both hands. She thought about the NDA, the woman with silver hair, the marble lobby that made her shoes squeak in humiliation. Somewhere inside that tower, someone rich enough to forget her kind existed was about to meet her. What did people like him expect? A doll who smiled on cue, a ghost who vanished when the camera stopped. Her chest tightened, but another thought crept in, quieter yet stronger. What if this is the chance you've been praying for? Ethan moved through his morning with precision. Coffee black, exercises done, schedule cleared. The world assumed he wasted days staring from windows, a crippled air clinging to relevance. Let them think it. Power like silence more than speeches. Yet today, silence gnawed instead of soothed. He wheeled to the mirror and studied his reflection. Sharp suit, darker tie, broad shoulders, hair combed with ruthless care. Everything arranged to distract from the chair that stole half the world's respect. He hated mirrors not because they lied, but because they never softened. His lawyer had insisted on discretion, on filtering candidates before Ethan even knew their names. A contract marriage isn't romantic, Ethan, Miriam had said, but it doesn't have to be cruel either. He almost laughed. What woman would walk into such a bargain without cruelty nipping at her heels? Still, he waited in the conference room, sunlight climbing across polished wood, hands steepled under his chin. Waiting, despite himself. The elevator doors parted, and Amelia's breath stuttered. Miriam greeted her with the same fog-colored suit, her tone professional but not unkind. He's ready for you. Amelia's shoes whispered against the carpet as she followed Miriam inside. The room was enormous, the river shining through floor-to-ceiling glass. But all of it faded when her gaze landed on the man at the table. Ethan Blackwell. She knew the name. Who didn't? The newspapers had once worshipped him, the golden millionaire who built towers from ambition and arrogance. Then the accident had carved his life in half. Now he sat before her, posture regal despite the chair, his dark eyes cutting through her like truth refusing to hide. For a moment, Amelia forgot to breathe. He wasn't what she expected. Not fragile, not pitiful. Just wounded, yes, but powerful still. "You're Amelia Hart," Ethan said, his voice low, controlled, threaded with steel. "Sit." The command startled her, but she obeyed. Her palms sweated against the glass of water Miriam placed in front of her. Ethan studied her like she was a puzzle no one else had solved. "You signed the NDA. That means you know what's at stake." "I know, Amelia admitted, meeting his gaze despite the storm it carried. 1 year, a marriage on paper, appearances. His mouth twitched, humorless. "And in return, you gain security, housing, financial stability, enough to free you from chasing 3 jobs and overdue bills." The air left her lungs. He knew. Somehow he knew. "You've looked into me," she whispered. "I don't gamble blind," he said simply. Then, leaning forward, "Tell me, why did you say yes?" Amelia hesitated. Her instincts screamed to protect her pride, to play the part of someone indifferent. But pride didn't keep lights on. Pride didn't buy her mother's medicine. So she answered with trembling honesty. "Because I'm tired of drowning. Because this could save me." The silence that followed was thick. Ethan's jaw flexed, but something flickered in his eyes. Recognition, perhaps, or respect. "Fair enough," he said finally. "But let me be clear. This isn't love. This is business. I need a wife for 12 months. You need a lifeline. We sign papers, play our roles, and when the year ends, we walk away." Amelia's chest ached, but she nodded. "I understand." And yet, as their eyes locked across the polished table, both felt it, that dangerous whisper of possibility the contract had no room for. That evening, Amelia sat at her kitchen table, the offer in her hands like fire she couldn't put down. She imagined walking away, imagined accepting. Both roads frightened her. Her mother's voice crackled on the phone, soft and weary. "You sound different tonight, Leah. Lighter somehow." Amelia closed her eyes, tears pressing. "If only you knew." "Maybe I am," she said softly. And across the city, Ethan stared out over the skyline, the thought he tried hardest to bury rising anyway. What if she doesn't just play the role? What if she sees me? Do you think Amelia should accept the contract, even if it means risking her heart? Drop your thoughts in the comments. Your answer might change how others see her choice. The ink on the contract was darker than midnight, its weight pressing against Amelia's trembling fingers, as if the paper itself understood how much of her life was about to change. She sat at the long mahogany table in Ethan's penthouse, a pen poised between choice and consequence. The city outside roared with life. Honking horns, neon promises, laughter carried by wind. But in here, silence was a cathedral, broken only by the distant tick of clock. Miriam sat nearby, expression neutral, as if she'd overseen dozens of these arrangements before. For Amelia, however, nothing felt ordinary. Her heart thrummed so loudly she wondered if they could hear it echoing off the polished walls. Ethan sat across from her, every line of his body drawn taut, his dark gaze unreadable. He wore authority like a second skin. Even in the wheelchair, he exuded command. Yet beneath that steel, Amelia caught glimpses of something else. Pain carefully disguised, loneliness pretending not to exist. "Read it carefully," Ethan said, his voice a steady current. "No surprises. Every clause is plain." Amelia's eyes darted down the page again. "Marriage shall exist in legal terms only. Duration, 12 months. Financial provision, monthly stipend, full housing, healthcare, debt clearance at conclusion. Termination clause, mutual agreement, signed in presence of counsel." There it was spelled out in merciless black and white. Her future, packaged as an exchange. And yet, her chest burned with the weight of something unspoken. What about the heart? Her fingers tightened on the pen. She whispered, "And when it ends?" Ethan's jaw clenched. "We walk away. You to your life. Me to mine." His eyes, though, betrayed the faintest flicker of uncertainty, like a man who built walls and wasn't sure if they could hold forever. Amelia inhaled slowly, then scrawled her name. With that single movement, everything she thought she knew about survival shifted. The wedding was arranged with surgical precision. No flowers, no vows whispered beneath stained glass, no lace trailing behind. Instead, a courthouse, a registrar, and a signature that echoed louder than bells. Ethan wore a suit so sharp it looked like it could cut, his expression unyielding. Amelia wore the only dress she owned that passed for formal, a soft, ivory one she borrowed from Mrs. Alvarez. Strangers witnessed. Papers shuffled. Rings slid onto fingers not with trembling romance, but with the weight of a contract binding 2 worlds together. And yet, when his hand brushed hers in that brief exchange, Amelia's skin lit with fire. She pulled away quickly, blaming nerves. Ethan's gaze lingered a fraction too long before he masked it with indifference. That night, Amelia stood at the threshold of Ethan's penthouse, her new home. The marble floors gleamed, the walls stretched high, and chandeliers spilled light like diamonds. It was everything her life had never been. Yet she felt like an intruder, clutching her tote bag as though it could anchor her in this ocean of wealth. "Your wing is down that hall," Ethan said curtly, nodding toward corridor. "Bedroom, bath, study. Privacy is yours. We'll appear together at functions, but otherwise, you live as you please." Amelia nodded, throat tight. She wanted to thank him, but couldn't find words that didn't sound like surrender. She turned toward her room. only to hear his voice stop her. Amelia. She turned. His eyes were darker in the dim light, shadows pooling around them. This isn't charity. Remember that. Her breath caught. I never thought it was. For a heartbeat, their gazes locked, steel meeting softness, pride colliding with quiet defiance. Something invisible shifted in the air. Days blurred into a rhythm Amelia hadn't expected. Morning coffee on the balcony overlooking the city. Evenings at functions where she smiled politely at business partners who measured her with suspicion. Ethan always by her side, his hand firm at the small of her back, his voice clipped and controlled. To the world, they looked like a couple bound by choice. Behind closed doors, silence stretched between them like a taut string. But silence wasn't absence. It was pressure. It was a question neither dared ask. One evening, after a gala where whispers followed them like smoke, Amelia stood by the window, gazing out at the glittering city. Her heels were kicked off, her feet aching, but her heart beat louder than her exhaustion. She didn't notice Ethan until his chair rolled softly into view beside her. They don't believe it, he said flatly. She turned. Believe what? That you married me for anything but the money. His voice was hard, but she heard the wound beneath it. Amelia swallowed, fighting the heat rising in her chest. Let them think what they want. I don't care. Maybe you don't. But I do. His eyes burned into hers, frustration edged with vulnerability. This marriage exists to silence them. If they don't believe it. She cut him off, sharper than she meant. Then maybe stop treating me like a stranger when no one's looking. The words hung between them, trembling, dangerous. His gaze locked onto hers, a storm gathering. For the first time, Ethan Blackwell looked less like a millionaire in control of everything and more like a man on the edge of admitting he needed someone. And Amelia's heart, traitorous and tender, whispered what she had tried to deny since the courthouse. This isn't just business. This is the beginning of something neither of us understands. The inciting spark had been lit. 1 year of paper and promises was about to unravel into something neither contract nor pride could contain. Do you think a marriage built on paper can ever become real, or will it always be a lie? Share your thoughts in the comments. Your answer may be the truth Amelia and Ethan can't yet face. The nights in Ethan's penthouse always carried too much silence. Not the kind Amelia was used to, the quiet of exhaustion after long shifts, but an expensive, deliberate silence. Walls padded with marble, doors shutting out the city's chaos, chandeliers whispering wealth. She walked those halls barefoot, dress hem brushing her calves, wondering if the sound of her breathing echoed more than it should. It had been 2 weeks since their courthouse wedding. 2 weeks of stiff appearances and rehearsed smiles. 2 weeks of Ethan's hand resting at her back in public, guiding her like an actor who knew his lines but not his heart. And yet, between those performances, when the audience was gone and the doors shut, the silence pressed too close, daring them to break it. One evening, after a dinner where reporters' cameras flashed like lightning, Amelia slipped away to the balcony. The city pulsed beneath her, headlights weaving patterns across streets, skyscrapers standing tall like titans guarding secrets. She leaned on the rail, the wind tugging strands of hair free. Behind her, she heard the soft roll of Ethan's chair. He stopped a few feet away, hands resting on the wheels, as if uncertain whether to move closer. You did well tonight, he said finally. His voice carried that usual clipped precision, but beneath it, a note of something almost reluctant, human. Amelia turned, the city's glow washing her features. You make it sound like a test. It is, Ethan replied, his gaze fixed on hers, sharp yet searching. Every room we walk into, every whisper behind us, it's a test of whether this contract works, whether they believe us. Her heart thudded. She folded her arms. And what about you? Do you believe it? Silence fell. His jaw tightened. For once, he didn't have an immediate retort. When he finally spoke, his voice was lower, rougher. Sometimes I forget it's a lie. The words struck her like lightning, sparking heat through her veins. She turned away quickly, afraid he'd see the flush rising to her cheeks. Their days began to shift after that. Small things first. Ethan asking her opinion on which tie to wear before a meeting, Amelia leaving fresh flowers on the dining table, their scents cutting through the sterile air. They spoke more about trivial things, about the news, about a book Amelia had read once, and the music Ethan used to play on the piano. And in those conversations, the ice began to crack. But with closeness came friction. At a charity gala, Amelia noticed a woman with red lips and a diamond smile, watching Ethan too closely. She leaned near, whispering something that made Ethan's jaw harden. Amelia, standing at his side, forced her polite smile, though her chest burned. Later in the car, she finally asked, who was she? Ethan's eyes darkened. Nobody who matters. That didn't look like nobody. Amelia pressed, heat in her voice she hadn't meant to reveal. He turned sharply toward her, his stare cutting. Are you jealous? The air between them bristled. Amelia's throat tightened. She wanted to deny it, to laugh it off, but her voice betrayed her. Maybe I am. Is that so terrible? For a heartbeat. Ethan said nothing. Then, slowly, his lips curved, not into a cruel smirk, but into something softer, dangerous. Not terrible, he murmured. Just unexpected. Her heart raced all the way home. The turning point came one stormy night when lightning fractured the sky. Amelia woke to the sound of music, soft, hesitant notes floating through the penthouse. She padded down the hall, barefoot, and found Ethan at the piano. His fingers moved stiffly, uncertain, but the melody was raw. aching. She lingered in the doorway, breath caught. He looked up suddenly, catching her watching. For a moment, embarrassment flickered across his face, then pride buried it. "You play," she whispered. "Used to," he replied, voice edged with bitterness. "The accident. It took more than just my legs. It took control. Precision." Amelia stepped forward, drawn by something beyond choice. "It didn't take your soul." The words slipped out before she could stop them. His gaze locked onto hers, intense, burning. For the first time since they married, Ethan's walls cracked. "Why do you look at me like that?" he asked hoarsely. "Like I'm not broken." Her chest ached. She moved closer, her voice trembling but steady. "Because you're not." The silence that followed was thick with unsaid things. For one breathless moment, she thought he might reach for her, that the contract would crumble under the weight of something real. Instead, he turned back to the keys, his voice softer. "Go back to bed, Amelia." But the song he played after she left carried more longing than denial. Days blurred again, but now, every glance, every touch, every word carried new weight. Amelia found herself caring, not just about the stipend, not just about survival, but about Ethan, his silence, his pain, his pride. And Ethan, despite himself, found his gaze drawn to her more often. The way she laughed with Mrs. Alvarez when the neighbor visited. The way she read on the balcony, lips moving silently with the words. The way she refused to let him treat her like decoration. The contract had been meant to keep feelings out. Instead, it became the very soil where they began to bloom. One evening, as Amelia tucked her mother's ring back into its dish, she caught her reflection in the mirror. A question rose, uninvited, unrelenting. "Are you falling for him?" She pressed her hand against her chest, as if she could silence the answer. Across the hall, Ethan stared at the city lights, the same question clawing at him in reverse. "What happens if she falls for me, and I can't let myself love her back? If you were in Amelia's shoes, would you protect your heart and keep your distance? Or risk everything to love a man who swore he couldn't be loved?" Drop your answer in the comments. Your choice might be hers tomorrow. Rain ticked at the glass, as if asking to be let in. Amelia watched umbrellas open on the street, and felt the hush that comes before choices. Behind her, the quiet hum of Ethan's chair crossed the marble. "We're due at the hospital fundraiser," he said, softer than usual. "You ready?" She turned. Charcoal suit, the tie she picked, the stubborn line of his mouth. "I am," she said, and surprised herself by meaning it. The atrium glowed with polished stone and careful hope. Cameras blinked. A quartet stitched consolation into the air. Amelia knelt to a boy in a knitted cap. "Nice cape," she whispered, touching the edge of his hat. He grinned and took her finger. When she looked up, Ethan was watching like the sight made his lungs remember how. "You look different when you forget the room," he murmured later, when speeches ended. "And you look alive when you stop pretending you don't care," she said, then flushed. He smiled. "Touché." They were almost out when red lacquered nails grazed Ethan's shoulder. Vanessa Reed, diamond bright and camera safe, leaned in. "Resilience suits you," she purred. Her gaze slid to Amelia. "Fairy tale life in the tower." "It feels like work," Amelia replied. "The kind that matters." "Charming," Vanessa said, smile widening. "Bored brief Friday. Optics liquidity. You understand." "I always do," Ethan answered and wheeled on. "She has teeth," Amelia said in the car. "She has hunger," he said. "A lot of people do, when there's blood in the water." "Where now?" "Home," he said, then hesitated. "Not the tower. The river house. I keep files there I don't like leaving to chance." Cedar and rain greeted them. In the study, the river pressed itself against the glass. Ethan unlocked a drawer and set a slim folder on the desk. He rested his hand on it like a heartbeat he meant to steady. "I'm about to show you something almost no one knows," he said. "If you want to go back to not knowing, I'll call the car." "I stay," she said. He turned the folder. Legal prose marched down the page. She skimmed, slowed, then felt the meaning land. Trust instrument, Blackwell Holdings. Majority control contingent upon A. Marriage maintained for 12 continuous months inclusive of beneficiary's 33rd birthday. B. No material collapse of public confidence. C. Absence of adjudicated negligence in catastrophic incidents. A date underneath counted down 6 months. "You didn't marry me only to calm investors," she said. "I married you to keep what I built from being handed to people who'd strip it for parts," he said. "And I didn't tell you because I postponed honesty," she said. "That's still avoidance." "I know," he said. Her gaze stayed on clause C. "Catastrophic incidents," she said quietly. "The accident. My brakes failed," he said. "Police called it mechanical failure and driver error. Civil suit settled. If I'm found negligent, control transfers to a succession committee. Convenient, if you want me harmless." Before she could answer, her phone buzzed. A headline stabbed the screen. "Bride for hire? Anonymous source claims payment for participation." Grainy photos showed Amelia passing an envelope at a cafe. "That's a lie," she said, breath turning thin. "I paid my neighbor's pharmacy bill. The clinic's card reader was down." "They're setting you up," Ethan said evenly. "To undermine me, or to make you run." "Because of the trust," she whispered. "If the marriage looks like a sham, they'll argue I violated the spirit," he said. "They'll break me with the thing that saved me." She braced for suspicion. "Do you think I took money to marry you?" He didn't blink. "No." Relief cut through her like warmth in winter. The phone rang again. Miriam's name. Ethan hit speaker. "Tell me you have something." The independent mechanics report came in. Miriam said, breath tight, voice clipped. He found shear marks on your front brake line couplings. Not wear cuts. Clean. Someone tampered with your car, Ethan. The house seemed to tilt. Amelia gripped the desk. So it wasn't an accident. No, Miriam said. And the timing? 2 weeks before the trust would start to matter publicly. Enough to depress sentiment and position a successor. I'm sending the report to your encrypted drive. Security consult at 9 tomorrow. Who else knows? Ethan asked. Just the mechanic, me, and now, both of you, she said. Keep it tight. He ended the call and pressed his fingers to his eyes. Amelia heard her own voice from far away. Someone tried to kill you. Or the version of me that could stop them, he said. Either way. Who, she asked. Pick a name, he said. Victor Ames, CFO with a God complex and a spreadsheet for a conscience. My uncle, Martin, who apologizes while he steals. Vanessa, who loves cameras more than people. A contractor I humiliated on a bad day. I made enemies when I didn't have to. Pride makes easy work for saboteurs. She crossed to him without deciding to. She set her hand over his. He gripped back. The contact said a thing neither of them could yet risk with words. I'm here. He let go first, not far. You need to decide if you still want this, he said. And this meant the contract, the danger, the truth him. It's not a performance now. It never was, maybe, but the script is burning. It hurts that you didn't tell me about the trust, she said. That you chose for me what I needed to know. I told myself I was keeping a mess off you, he said. I was wrong. I want to choose knowing, she said. Not live inside a story you curate. He nodded as if the motion cost him. Then here's the rest. You're a target now. They'll try to buy you, smear you, turn kindness into a leash. If you ever need to run, tell me first so I can clear the way. She thought of rent notices and night shifts and the particular shape of hunger that makes people cruel to themselves. She thought of a boy's small hand, of Vanessa's smile, of a piano's unfinished song. Fear rose and broke. Steadiness remained. I'm not running, she said. Not from you. He exhaled. Then we fight. They turned fear into lists. Names, dates, access. Who knew the trust clauses? Who had keys to the garage? Who stood to gain if public faith collapsed? The printer hummed. Near dusk, Ethan stared at the wall they'd filled and said, We haven't listed me. What do you mean? She asked. The part of me that sharpened knives for sport, he said. I called it excellence. Sometimes it was cruelty. Sometimes I humiliated people because losing felt like drowning. She stepped into the space his confession made. You don't have to kill who you were, she said. You can teach him. He laughed, startled. I don't know how. You do, she said. When you play in the dark, the room remembers it's alive. Start there. His mouth softened. You make me want to be not good. Better. Good is a rule, she said. Better is a road. He rolled to the piano. She rested her hand where his would if he were walking. He pressed one key, then a chord, then a melody that had haunted her since the first night. He faltered, and she set her palm on his shoulder. The notes steadied. When the last chord dissolved, he turned. Come here, he said, no command, no plea. She went. He lifted his hand and touched her jaw like a vow. I'm going to kiss you now, he said, and the honesty undid her. The kiss was not fireworks. It was recognition, quiet and absolute. He tasted of coffee and stubbornness in a man who had decided to try. She tasted of rain and the fierce relief of being chosen. When they parted, the house felt rearranged. I'm in, she said, for the fight, for whatever this is. He closed his eyes like prayer. Then a rule, he said. No more postponing honesty. We tell each other the worst thing first. She nodded. Worst thing, they'll use my mom to get to me. They'll try, he said. They'll fail. Your turn. I don't know if I'm more afraid of losing the company or losing you. Then we refuse to lose either, she said, because defiance steadies hope. They went back to work. Miriam's report hit the encrypted drive. Photos of cut couplings, a timeline that made deliberate sense, a list of possible access points. They sketched next steps in tight handwriting. Amelia would ask the clinic pharmacist for a letter confirming the payment. Miriam would pull garage logs and question the night staff. Ethan would call for a quiet internal audit and watch who blanched. They chose a signal, a single text that read rain, if either felt cornered. Before they packed up, Amelia wrote, We fight fair. Ethan underlined it and added, We protect the innocent first, meaning her mother. They staged a simple panic plan, 2 bags by the door, driver on standby. When the printer spat the plan, Ethan tapped the page. Not paranoia, he said. Choreography. She met his eyes. Then we learned the steps. Amelia traced a red circle around garage log anomalies. 3 entries with no recorded badge, she said. 2 nights before the crash. I moved a meeting that week, Ethan said slowly. I got an anonymous tip about a contractor's bid and stayed late to confront him. Everyone saw. The next morning, the security chief called in sick. Victor took over approvals. Vanessa stopped by with coffee she never brings. My uncle left me a voicemail about dinner I never returned. He dragged a hand through his hair. They all orbit the same day. We don't know which star is burning us, she said. Not yet. No, he said. But now I know the sky is rigged. I stopped believing in coincidence. Her phone buzzed again. Another article, same lie, uglier headline. The comments swelled with strangers who thought certainty was proof. Ethan took the phone, set it face down, and slid it away like a plate of spoiled food. They can shout, he said. We'll bring receipts. How, she asked. By being boringly, relentlessly true, he said. Appear where we're supposed to appear. Help where help is needed. Speak to people, not cameras. Build a record. And privately, we tear out rot. You make it sound simple. It won't be, he said. But simple aims survive complicated days. He glanced toward the window. Board brief Friday, he said. They'll circle. I want to watch where each person chooses to stand. And us, she asked. We stand together, he said. He reached for her hand again. She let him, not because she needed him to hold her up, but because she liked the way steadiness felt shared. Night came early. They ate what the housekeeper had left, standing at the kitchen island. Lemon chicken, salted potatoes, strawberries rinsed too cold. Ordinary details settled around danger and made it easier to face. Later, at the window, Amelia touched the glass. Her reflection with Ethan's chair behind her felt like a quiet promise. He rolled up beside her without a sound. Thank you, he said. For what? For not flinching, he said. For staying when the story got ugly. Save it for after we win, she said, and the word after landed hard. After we win, he repeated. Outside, the city breathed. Inside, two people who had met beneath a courthouse light stood at the exact center of the year they had agreed to survive and realized the truth no clause had prepared them for. The enemy wasn't only out there in boardrooms and headlines. It was the fear that made them small. And the weapon wasn't only evidence and strategy. It was the way their hands had learned to find each other in the dark. Friday arrived with air that tasted like a warning. The sky hung low over the city, pressing its weight into windows and shoulders. Amelia pinned her hair back with steady fingers that didn't feel like hers. Across the table, Ethan tightened his tie, the same muted blue she'd once picked, but the color looked different on a day that promised to take more than it gave. You don't have to come, he said, voice controlled, eyes restless. The board will be teeth. I'm not a prop, she answered. I'm your wife. Something eased in his jaw that pride couldn't control. Then we go. Cameras waited at the curb, like a weather system with opinions. Flashes popped. Questions snapped into the air. How much did she cost? Is the trust real? Are you still fit to lead? The driver opened the back door like a shield. Inside the car, silence did what it always did for them, offered a shallow kind of mercy. The boardroom had the clean chill of a surgical theater. The table glowed under recessed lights. Men and women in precise suits arranged their faces into professional concern. Victor Ames, elegant, pale, measured, sat near the head, a stack of folders in front of him like ammunition. Vanessa leaned back, lacquered, a fraction too bright. Uncle Martin smiled with practiced sympathy that remembered which cameras belonged to which magazines. Miriam stood at the far end, legal pad and pen, her eyes the color of a storm that refused to move on. Let's begin, Victor said, and even his voice sounded ironed. Ethan's chair hummed as he rolled forward. Before anyone reads anything, know this. New evidence shows my crash wasn't an accident. Someone cut my brake lines. The report's in your data room. Vanessa's brows lifted in graceful surprise. Sabotage? How dramatic. Victor steepled his hands. And yet, the police concluded otherwise. Civilly resolved. Why suggest conspiracy now? Because the evidence existed now, Ethan said. Because someone wanted me quiet. Or perhaps, Martin murmured, you're finding patterns where pain lives. Miriam slid a copy of the mechanic's notarized statement across the table, her expression math precise. We'll entertain civil and criminal avenues once the forensic chain is complete. Today's agenda remains unchanged. Confidence, contingency, and governance. Governance, Ethan asked, the words sharpening in his mouth. Victor lifted one folder, the paper inside whispering. Recent media has raised questions about the authenticity of your marriage. A spouse accepting cash for participation. That story is false, Amelia said, her voice clearer than her pulse. A neighbor's pharmacy bill. The clinic's card reader was down. I have a receipt. We'll review it in due course, Victor replied, with a smile that could refrigerate tea. In the meantime, our lenders have asked whether the trust conditions expose us to a leadership cliff. A one-year marriage standing between us and governance chaos. It unsettles them. You wrote that instrument, Ethan said. I advised a prior counsel, Victor corrected. We must navigate present realities, not past authorship. In short, we propose an interim operations committee to share the burden of decisions until sentiment stabilizes. Meaning, Vanessa said sweetly, we guard you from attack. Meaning, Miriam said calmly, you neuter him in public while protecting your appetites in private. The room cooled a degree. Victor spread his hands. A vote will be recorded later today. Pending that, there's an ancillary matter. He turned a page with ceremonial care. A wire transfer into Ms. Hart's account. $50,000, 2 days before the marriage. Anonymous sender. Flagged by compliance sweep. Amelia felt the chair under her, suddenly unsure of the floor. What transfer? She whispered. Victor slid a printout across the table. Number stared up, polite and brutal. A line on an account that was hers, a deposit she'd never seen. That isn't mine, she said. I didn't. Of course, Vanessa said, oiled sympathy in her tone. Accounts are tricky. Passwords get guessed. Phones stolen. Enough, Ethan said, and the word landed with the weight of steel. He turned to Miriam. Freeze all motion on that data until we verify chain of custody. Already in progress, Miriam said. Victor laced his fingers. Regardless of source, perception corrodes. Our duty is to keep the company solvent. The market doesn't care about your private reassurances. What the market cares about, Ethan said evenly, is whether this company still builds things that stand. And whether its leader still stands, Victor countered, gaze pointed. Your best argument for stability would be stepping back while investigations proceed. I'll take that under advisement, Ethan said, the lie functional. The meeting slid into numbers and threats. Amelia heard language without words. We'll save you if you surrender. We'll praise you as we remove you. We'll pity you as we pocket your work. She held her spine as if it could hold him. They left the building into a hailstorm of microphones. In the car, Ethan exhaled like a diver who'd surfaced alone. That transfer is a plant, he said. I'll prove it. You don't have to convince me, she answered. The implication unfolded behind her words. The world needed convincing. His phone vibrated. Miriam. He answered on speaker. Your encrypted drive was accessed, she said without preamble. The mechanic's report is gone. Ethan's hand tightened on the armrest. Impossible. Not with the right token and the right door, she said. We still have a signed hard copy in my notes. But whoever walked into that folder wanted to vacuum the air. Who knew the credentials? He asked softly. Me, Miriam said. You. And whichever server tech Victor got a hold of keys. Also, Amelia. I don't have access, Amelia said. I know. But you have a mother who lives in an address that appears twice today on a gossip sites where she came from feature, Miriam said. Reporters are already on her floor. Amelia's breath broke. I need to go to her. Ethan nodded, already dialing the driver. We'll go now. No, Miriam said, voice turning warning. Paparazzi are waiting outside your tower and the hospital. If you go together, it becomes a caravan. Amelia, take my car. Ethan, stay put and force them to split their resources. I'll run interference at the clinic and have security posted at your mother's door. I'm not leaving him, Amelia started. Protect him by not painting a target. Miriam cut in. Protect your mother by moving fast. Go. Choice split her chest. Ethan caught her wrist, gentler than panic. Go, he said. I'll be here when you come back. Miriam's sedan smelled like new leather and decisions. Amelia kept her head down as the driver slid through side streets, avoiding cameras that flocked like crows. At her mother's building, noise hit like heat. Lights, lenses, voices knifing questions into air. She pulled her hood up and pushed through bodies that felt too warm and too eager. Amelia, someone yelled. How much for a year? Her mother's door was barred by a security guard with a neck like a tree trunk and eyes that had seen too much. Ms. Hart, he asked, recognizing her from photos he'd had no right to know. Ms. Rosario asked me to wait for you. Inside, the apartment felt smaller than Amelia remembered, as if reporters had stolen cubic feet. Her mother sat on the edge of the bed, color wrong, breath too shallow. When she looked up and saw her daughter, relief and worry collided. Leah, she said, reaching. Are you? I'm fine, Amelia lied. Are you okay? Headache, her mother said. Too many knocks on the door. Too much noise. She coughed, and the sound had a hook in it. Men asking questions like they were the police, wanting to know if I sold my child. Amelia sat, palms cupping her mother's lined face. They don't get to know us. Her phone buzzed. Unknown number. Then a message that felt like the air had curdled. Tell the cripple to step down, or we show your mother's hospital chart to the world. A photo followed, blurry, invasive. Her mother in a gown 5 years ago, tubing in fear. Her stomach flipped to ice. She showed the screen to the guard. He swore under his breath and called downstairs. We'll need an escort to the car, he said. You're not staying here. Her mother shook her head. We can't run forever. We won't, Amelia said. But not tonight. The guard's radio crackled. Stairwell breach, someone said. 2 men with press passes that aren't ours. Amelia moved. She guided her mother to the back stairs. The guard flanked. The hallway smelled like boiled onions and panic. At the bottom, the building's custodian held open a service door with the stubbornness of someone who dragged too many broken things back into working shape. Outside, rain stitched a veil through the alley. The driver had pulled around. The security guard folded her mother into the car, then shut the door against questions that insisted on themselves. Miriam called as they pulled away. We're rerouting you to a private entrance at the clinic, she said, voice tight. We'll get her seen without blood in the water. Thank you, Amelia said, and the gratitude hurt. At the clinic's back door, a nurse with tired eyes and a fierce bun met them. This way. I've turned off 2 lights in the corridor, so the cameras can't auto-adjust. Walk between them. They moved through a world that had learned to hide. In an exam room, the doctor's touch was steady. Oxygen, a steroid, a prescription written with a pen that didn't shake. She needs rest, the doctor said quietly. And distance from wolves. Amelia's laugh broke in the middle. If you have a map, I'll take 2. Her phone buzzed again. This time, Ethan. Where are you? Safe? She texted one word. Rain. He responded in seconds. On my way? She typed no. Stay. They're hunting you at the doors. The typing dots paused, then, hate this. Me too, she sent. The doctor glanced at the screen. Go, he said kindly. Sit with her. The medicine will help. Amelia sat and held her mother's hand. The older woman watched her the way mothers do when their children walk into fire. You love him, her mother said softly. Amelia didn't look away. I think I do. Then be brave the right way. Pride is cheap armor. Choose the kind that costs. What if the cost is him? Amelia whispered. Then it wasn't love, her mother said, not unkindly. They moved her mother to a quiet room with a door that didn't exist on public maps. Amelia exhaled a fraction of fear and texted Miriam. Settled. Thank you. Miriam replied. Stay put. I'll sit in the hall. Hours blurred and gathered. On the television in the corner, sound off, captions marching, Amelia saw her own face hammered into a narrative that refused to ask permission. A new clip looped, surveillance footage from a bank she'd never entered, a figure in a coat the color of hers accepting an envelope. Grainy, angled, convenient. Her chest went cold. The coat was wrong in the cuffs. The gait wasn't hers. But the story had never needed accuracy, just the illusion of it. Meanwhile, across town, Ethan stood at his window and watched his reflection become rumor. The news crawl asked whether a leader could lead when his home looked like strategy instead of shelter. His phone vibrated without rest. Sponsors requested reassurances, then requested space. A lender moved from monitoring the situation to reviewing covenants. Miriam arrived with damp hair and a legal folder that had grown heavier. "They're filing for an emergency injunction," she said, dropping into a chair like gravity one, citing material collapse of public confidence and the appearance of a sham marriage. If a judge buys it, the trust gets frozen pending review. Victor's committee takes practical control. "How long?" Ethan asked. 48 hours if the docket moves," Miriam said. "They chose the right judge for speed." "Then I make a statement," Ethan said. "I tell the truth and force them to answer." PR advised no, Miriam said. "They want you silent while they spin you as dignified." "Dignified is a word used by men who don't have their name on the door," he snapped, then softened. "I won't let them define us." He called a press conference at the tower's lobby despite counsel and common sense. Cameras gathered like metal flowers thirsty for incandescent pain. Amelia watched from the clinic, her mother sleeping softly, oxygen line a clear thread at her nose. Ethan wheeled to the mic and let the noise fall a degree. "I married Amelia because she is braver than anyone I know," he said, voice steady, eyes refusing to blink. "The money is noise. The trust is a tool to keep vultures from picking clean what I built with 1,000 hands. Someone cut my brakes. Someone is cutting every wire they can find to keep me from finding the truth. I'm not stepping back. I'm stepping through." A reporter's hand shot up, voice sharp. "So you admit your marriage was strategic?" "I admit my life is strategic," he said. "And that love happened despite it." The words hung and trembled. In the clinic, Amelia's heart climbed into her throat. Love. He had named the thing. But in the edit bays that feed televisions, a sentence became a noose. "I admit my marriage was strategic." Cut. Looped, stripped of the words that held it, it ran beneath headlines that resembled verdicts. The stock dipped. Vendors called. The bank requested a covenant meeting. On a gossip site, a commenter posted her mother's full name and door code. The guard called Amelia in a whisper. "Don't come back to the apartment." They're on the stairs again. The next morning, Miriam walked into the clinic room with dark circles like bruises and news that tasted like a nail. Emergency hearing is set for noon. The petition claims harm to public interest if you remain sole decision maker. They've attached the edited clip. They've attached the mystery transfer. They've attached your wife's supposed admissions from an unnamed source. "What admissions?" Amelia asked, throat narrowing. "A fake chat," Miriam said softly. "Fabricated from your text to your neighbor about Farmassave and a landlord. It reads like a script they wrote for you." Ethan stared at the ceiling for a long breath that held more than air. "How do I win a game where they write the rules and the scoreboard?" "You don't," Miriam said. "You change the game." "How?" he asked. "By taking away their best weapon," she said, then looked at Amelia. "The weapon is her. Publicly, I mean. They'll keep hitting that bruise until it bleeds out. If you two separate, temporarily, loudly, you remove the trust's teeth, you calm the bank, you take away their proof of sham unity for power. It's poison. It might also be medicine." Amelia's gut clenched. "You wanted to pretend to throw me away." "I wanted to protect you," Miriam said. "And himself. And 1,000 paychecks that depend on stability." "I won't," Ethan said, immediate absolute. "I won't put you outside to save a building with my name on it." "Then they will put us all outside," Miriam said, gentle as a blade. "This isn't fair. It is what it is." The room pressed in. Amelia looked at her mother, at the line of oxygen, at the paper bracelet on her wrist. "Choose the kind of bravery that costs," her mother had told her. Love was not letting a man be felled by protecting you. She turned to Ethan. "Do it." His head snapped. "No. You told me we tell each other the worst thing first," she said. "The worst thing is this. If you don't make a cut that looks like control, they'll carve you apart. They won't stop with you." "I'd rather lose the company than lose you," he said, and fury and fear ate opposite sides of the sentence. "And I'd rather lose you for a while than watch you become a ruin," she said, and the words cracked her. He shook his head like refusal could cancel gravity. "I won't let you walk out of my life to satisfy men who can't build." "You're not letting me," she said, a strange calm descending because the alternative was drowning. "I'm choosing." Silence made a cathedral around them. He closed his eyes. When he opened them, something fundamental had shifted. "Then we do this my way," he said at last, voice rough. "No humiliation for you. No theater for them. I'll say I need time. I'll say the pressure is mine alone. You won't be on the steps. You won't be turned into spectacle." She nodded, shaky. He reached for her. She stepped into his hand. Their foreheads touched like prayer. "I will come back," she whispered. "I will still be here," he said. At noon, the courthouse's stone stairs filled with cameras and strangers who called themselves the public. Miriam handled the hearing with a surgeon's mind and a poet's disdain for fraud. She argued that edited clips are not evidence, that anonymous transfers are not proof, that the trust conditions were designed specifically to protect, not to consolidate, power. Still, the judge, a woman whose mouth had learned not to give much away, set a temporary order, interim oversight for 30 days. Review pending further evidence. No major asset sales. No change in executive compensation. No termination of existing long-term contracts without committee approval. Victor emerged into microphones with phrases like calm and continuity and collective stewardship. Ethan followed, flanked by Miriam, and said as little as words allow. "A welcome independent review," he said, which meant he did not and would not fight it on the courthouse steps. Amelia watched from the clinic room, holding her mother's hand until the older woman slept. When the broadcast cut to an anchor with hair too shiny to be accidental, Amelia stood and packed a small bag. Clothes that didn't wrinkle. The notebook where she had started writing courage as a practice. A photo of her mother at 20, smiling, defiant. She left the bag with Miriam at the clinic desk. "Don't tell him until after his board debrief," she said. "He won't forgive me," Miriam said quietly. "He will," Amelia said. "He's learning how." "And you?" Miriam asked. "I'll forgive him for surviving without me," she said, and the sentence felt like a bruise she pressed on purpose. She went to the river house because the tower bristled and the clinic had walls thin to wandering ears. The house was quiet, rooms holding their breath. She walked the hall to her wing and stood in the doorway, staring at the bed she'd made that morning out of habit, at the book on the side table, spine broken in the exact place where the hero decided to turn back and didn't. She sat at the desk and wrote a letter on the good paper because the decision deserved a surface that wouldn't crumple. "I'm not running," she wrote. "I'm stepping aside so you can swing. I'm not ashamed of us. If distance saves you, then here it is. I will be where you can't be reached by men who smell blood. I will be listening for the music you promised you'd learn to play again. Send one word when it's safe. Home." She slid the letter under the stone on the kitchen island they used to hold recipes and plans. Beneath it, barely visible, the emergency bag sat ready by the door, a promise with a handle. The driver took her to a motel off the highway that forgot to look like anything but survival. The room smelled like cleaning fluid and cigarettes extinct 10 years. She sat on the edge of the bed and didn't cry because crying would require permission she hadn't granted herself. Far across the city, Ethan returned to the river house after the debrief like a man who had outlived a battlefield and found the flag still moving in a draft. He saw the bag missing first, then the letter. He read it twice, then again, then held it to his chest like pain needed paper to anchor itself. He wheeled to the piano because the body remembers the room that teaches it how to live. He lifted his hands and nothing happened. The keys looked like teeth in a smile that refused to mean well. Miriam arrived and leaned in the doorway without announcing herself, because comfort is sometimes silent. "The motel's safe," she said softly. "I put a retired cop on the hallway. She asked me to tell you nothing until now. You can be angry at me." "Angry is easy," he said, eyes on keys. "Doing the thing that matters is hard." He played a single note. It hung and fell as if gravity had more rights than music. "They froze my hands," he said. "Not the chair, not the committee, the choice to let her go." "They didn't freeze," Miriam said. "They're shaking. Shaking is what happens before you hold steady." He laughed without humor. "Good to know the manual exists." "Date 2 tomorrow," she said. "We start pulling on threads. Garage logs. Badge misuse. Server tokens. The anonymous transfer. We'll find the seam." He nodded like the act could qualify as yes. When she left, night sat on the house like a verdict. Ethan turned off lights not because he needed dark, but because he couldn't justify brightness on a day that had taken most of it. He lay awake and replayed sentences he couldn't edit. "I admit my marriage was strategic." The clip's incomplete truth tasted like betrayal of language itself. At the motel, the air conditioner rattled toward dawn. Amelia stared at the ceiling and measured time in the spaces between machines. She thought of the river, the mechanical vultures at the courthouse, the way Ethan's voice shifted when he said love. She pressed her palm to her sternum as if she could keep a promise from leaving. In the morning, a courier pushed an envelope under Ethan's door with no return address. Inside, a thumb drive and one photocopied page. "You picked the wrong enemies." On the drive, grainy footage from a garage camera no security team had ever mentioned. A figure in a maintenance jacket slipped a small blade along a brake line. The footage ended before a face turned. The timestamp matched the night of his late meeting. The night Victor took approvals, the morning the security chief called in sick. Proof. Not enough to name, enough to know. He called Miriam. "We have a hand," he said. "We need a face." "Then we're somewhere," she said. "Hold your line. I'll work the source." He hung up and stared at the empty side of the bed in a house too clean to forgive him for living in it. In the afternoon, the committee met without him and issued a statement in which words like stability and prudent oversight did what euphemisms always do. Dress a wolf in linen and call executive. His phone lit with texts from executives who had once laughed too loudly at his jokes. "We're with you, whatever you need," they typed, and the messages smelled like freshly varnished fences. He turned the phone face down and rolled to the window. The river didn't care. It moved its freight and its secrets. By dusk, loneliness felt like a third person in the room. He took the stairs in his chair down to the dock, because motion sometimes tricks the brain into thinking solution. He lifted his face tonight and asked a question he didn't articulate. "What if I don't win?" The water answered with its oldest language. "Keep moving or you stop being water." At the motel, Amelia bought a cheap notebook with a cover printed to look like wood and wrote until her hand cramped. She wrote his name twice and crossed it out like superstition. She wrote every lie they'd told, then every truth they hadn't been allowed to say, then the one thing she could give with distance. "I am here." The room is small and the bed is loud, but I am here. Do not let them turn you into their version of you. The man who kissed me in a house carved out of rain is the man who can walk through this without legs. I'm not leaving you. I'm letting you fight. She slept for an hour and woke to a dream in which cameras had hands. She turned the light on because darkness fed the wrong animals. Back at the river house, Ethan finally slept and woke to a sound that wasn't sound, the sense, deep in the animal parts of the mind, that a presence shared the room. He held still. A shadow moved in the hallway, paused at Amelia's empty door, then faded like a thought you don't want. He rolled forward, heart on a metronome that didn't keep time well. Nothing. A house with corners is a stage for ghosts. He checked locks and windows and closets because control is sometimes a list. He returned to bed and made a decision in a voice only the ceiling heard. One more day, he said. If I can't move the field, I'll move my feet. Morning broke thin. A text arrived from an unknown number. 3 words that were actually a trap. We can talk. Attached, a meeting time, a cafe address he didn't recognize, a promise of a name for a price he could pay in pride. He sent the number to Miriam. She wrote back, don't bite. If it's real, they'll bite again. We set the bait. He turned the chair in a slow circle and stared at the piano until it stopped being a piece of furniture and started being a choice. He rolled to it, placed his fingers, and played the first line of the melody he had failed a dozen times. It trembled. It held. He moved to the second line and thought of the court order and the motel and the thumb drive and the committee and his mother's photo smiling from a frame he hadn't dusted. On the third line, his hands failed. The notes fell apart. He closed the keyboard gently and sat in the quiet that follows giving up. At the motel, the television in the lobby bled a headline into the room as she walked by for coffee. Blackwell steps aside. Committee takes reins. The anchor smiled like a funeral without flowers. A crawl at the bottom read, wife in hiding as scandal spreads. The word hiding burned. She took her coffee back to the room and didn't drink it. She held it like warmth could teach bone. The day thinned into a line. Hope shrank to a point you could balance on a nail. The year they had agreed to survive looked like a corridor with no doors, just a wall at the end and a sign that said maintenance. A version of the story existed in public that had no place for the truth. The trust was half frozen. The board half victorious. The city half convinced. She was half gone. He was half held. And the halves did not make a hole you could live inside. Night laid itself down like a last argument. Amelia turned off the lamp and whispered into the dark, because sometimes you have to speak to something you can't see. Don't quit, she said. Not yet. In the river house, Ethan stared at the ceiling and answered a person who wasn't there. I won't, he said, even if it means losing you. He closed his eyes and felt the exact weight of the thing he feared most. Failure that cost not money but meaning. Somewhere between one breath and the next, exhaustion finally took him. In his sleep, the piano played itself, and when he reached to touch the keys, they moved away. The darkest hour did what it always does, arrived without explanation, stayed without apology, and asked a single question that sounded like a dare. What will you be when the lights come back on? Morning arrived like a thinner kind of darkness, the motel curtains holding back a sun that hadn't yet decided to try. Amelia lay awake with her palms flat on the blanket, as if she could press calm into her bones. She heard the hallway's distant elevator open, close, cough. In the next room, a television argued about weather and sports scores. She didn't move until her phone vibrated across the nightstand. Miriam, I have a thread. Pull at noon. Safe rendezvous. No press. Amelia stared at the words and then at her reflection in the mirror. Eyes ringed with sleeplessness, a mouth set with something tougher than hope. Yes, she typed. The reply came with a pin dropped on a map, an address tucked behind a laundromat where steam rose in ghosts. She dressed in clothes that looked like nobody's story, shoved her notebook in her bag, and left without leaving a dent in the bedspread. Outside, the sky wore a gray that refused to explain itself. Across the river, Ethan set his coffee down without tasting it. He had not slept well. His mind had run laps in rooms with no doors. He wheeled to the window, stared at water carrying freight more efficiently than any argument, and told himself he could do one useful thing before the day began to take its price. He texted Miriam and received the same pin, the same promise. Come alone, she had added. In a narrow lot behind the laundromat, Miriam stood under a rusted awning, hair pulled back, rain scraping at her shoulders. She nodded once to Amelia and once to Ethan, then opened the side door of an unremarkable van. Inside, a cooler hummed and a compact workstation glowed with 2 monitors. The driver, square hands, retiree's posture, eyes like doors that open only for certain keys, tipped 2 fingers from the wheel. Gail, Miriam said, former detective lieutenant, believes in old-fashioned evidence. Gail lifted the lid on the cooler. Inside sat a sealed envelope and a bank security drive in a plastic bag with chain of custody labels. Bank manager at the branch your phantom visit supposedly happened, he said. He's a cousin of my sister-in-law, and he's still mad about a renovation the PR firm botched last year. He pulled the original footage from the camera system and walked it out the back door to me because I brought him cannoli. Amelia almost laughed, the sound breaking into something else. Does it help? Miriam slid a thumb drive into the laptop. Static, a menu, then footage from a camera that looked down on a teller row. Gail froze a frame and zoomed into the corner. See that logo? He asked, tapping the monitor, where the lower right corner showed Kestrel Cam 4.8 and a timestamp in ochre. Your leak video had Kestrel Cam 5.1 burned in, with a timestamp format Kestrel only started using last quarter. The bank never upgraded. The deposit clip is a Frankenstein. Who stitched it? Ethan asked. Someone with access to B-roll from other branches, Miriam said, and to footage of a woman in a coat that looks like yours from behind. She glanced at Amelia. Your neighbor's building has a lobby camera. The day you paid the pharmacy bill, the coat you wore has a frayed cuff on the left sleeve. The viral video's coat is clean. Stupid mistake. Arrogance always leaves a seam. Who has access to lobby feeds? Ethan asked. Property manager, Gail said, and the PR firm who managed the landlord's community spotlight last year. He handed over a printout, Verilux Media LLC, with a signature below. Vanessa Reed, managing partner. Cold slid down Amelia's spine. So she built the lie herself. Or paid someone to, Miriam said. Either way, we can tie the edit to her shop. It's enough to subpoena, maybe to embarrass, not yet to arrest. She opened the sealed envelope next. Garage access logs from the night your brakes were cut. The official record shows 3 badge pings. The unofficial backup server shows 6. She laid 2 sheets side by side. The missing 3? One is a static maintenance badge issued to an external contractor, Arrowhead Facilities, activated by Victor's office that week, deactivated the next. One is a visitor, temporary, as Ethan said. And one is a ghost, a badge ID that doesn't exist in inventory. That last one is interesting because the only machine that creates badge IDs sits behind your uncle's assistant's desk. Ethan's hands closed on the rims of his wheels until skin pulled white. Martin, he said, voice quiet, and the quiet was not mercy. Of course he looked sorry while he lifted the silverware. Gail pulled up a photograph from the garage's long-angle camera, grainy, tilted slightly wrong. Zoomed and stabilized, the maintenance jacket has a stitch patch that's off-brand. Arrowhead's patch has an indented serif on the A. This one is block. That's a cheap counterfeit, likely bought online. I ran it against our list of recent facility subcontracts. A temp vendor called Redline Industrial worked 3 nights that month, billed through a shell that lands back in a trust connected to Martin's charity. It's a net, Amelia said, throat thickening. Vanessa sows the rumor. Victor writes the plan. Martin buys the bolt cutters. And each thinks the others have dirt on them, so nobody talks, Miriam said. Classic triangular deterrence. It's ugly, but we can use it. Ow, Ethan asked. We stop pulling alone and start pulling together, Miriam said. She slid a new folder across the monitor. Here's the plan. Step 1. Honey tokens. We create 3 versions of the same internal memo about a potential divestiture. One that would enrage Martin, one that would tempt Vanessa with PR prestige, one that would let Victor imagine a quiet coup. Each carries a different invisible watermark and a different minor typo. We send them to each separately under strict privilege. When the leak hits the press, we know whose memo it is by the typo. That's your leaker. And if they don't leak? Ethan asked. They will, Miriam said. Arsonists like to warm their hands. Step 2. Amelia asked. Step 2. We bait the garage, Gail said, mouth flattening into something like a smile. Tonight, we stage a service issue at the tower's south lift. Committee members have to use Garage B because A is down for cleaning. We seed word, via Victor's admin, that a mechanics audit is happening at midnight. That evidence will be checked against newly discovered footage. Our friends will send someone to verify. The footage never gets verified. We'll have a small team in the opposite stairwell with a long lens and a lawyer who knows arrest protocol. We won't stop the runner, yet. We'll get hands and faces and a chain of custody. And step 3. Ethan asked. Step 3 is yours, Miriam said, eyes going to him. You walk into their boardroom on Monday, not as a man begging for his name, but as the person fighting for other people's jobs, with proof in both hands and a timeline that doesn't need adjectives. You force a vote to unfreeze the trust and to refer sabotage to law enforcement. And before that, you speak not to cameras, but to the people in your buildings. You tell them you won't sell them for a headline. Ethan leaned back and let breath move through him. You want me to become the man I pretended to be, he said. The version that builds instead of performs it. I want you to be the man Amelia sees when she listens to you play, Miriam said, simply. Gail passed Ethan a small device no bigger than a sugar packet. Sting token, he said. If the memo gets forwarded outside the allowed list, I get a ping and an IP. We'll know where it traveled. Amelia exhaled, slow, shaky. What about me? Miriam looked at her, as if the room's math included another axis. You're the other key, she said. They chose you as a weapon. Use that choice as a mirror. You'll go to your neighbor's landlord and obtain the maintenance request log for the week the community spotlight happened. You'll go to the pharmacy and get 3 affidavits, cash paid, card reader down, emergency fund for your neighbor's child. And, if you're willing, you will speak to the children's wing at the hospital on Sunday. No press, just families. Let the city see you without the camera's appetite. It's not optics. It's antidote. Amelia swallowed. Fear moved like weather, present, not absolute. I can do that. Also, Gail added, almost casually, the custodian from your mother's building, the one who held the door that night, called me. He said he recognized the mechanic's walk. A limp that favors the left, a shoulder heavy from years carrying wrong weight. He remembers the same gait on a man who once came with Martin to inspect the boiler room before the holidays. He said Merry Christmas to the thermostat, the custodian said. We'll get him to line up photos. Amelia's laugh surprised her. Boilers do need encouragement, she said. Sometimes, Gail said. Miriam closed the laptop. There's one more piece, she said. It's not legal. It's not strategy. It's what keeps plans from turning brittle. Do you two want to see each other before we start the string of risks? Ethan's hands stilled. Amelia's eyes lifted. Miriam accepted the answer that showed on both faces. Gail will take Amelia to the river house by the back road. I'll meet you there with the honey tokens. An hour. Then we go. The river house felt different because absence had rearranged the light. Amelia stepped inside and heard rain on the deck like 1,000 patient knuckles. She stood in the doorway to the study and watched Ethan come toward her, the wheel silent on wood, his face naked with the kind of worry that doesn't know how to be proud. You left a letter that taught me how to breathe, he said. You spoke a word that made me stay, she answered. Love. He didn't rush. He stopped within reach and lifted his hand, and she set her cheek into his palm as if it had a right to be there. His mouth found hers with none of the performance the world demanded from them. It was slow, steady, a litany answered. The kiss said, we have not broken. We have bent toward each other. When they parted, he laughed softly, incredulous at the sound. I thought I'd lost you. You almost did, she said, and the truth did not hurt as much as it tried to. Don't run for me again, he said, and then corrected himself without prompting. Or, if you have to, tell me where the door is so I can meet you on the other side. She smiled into his frustration. Deal. They sat at the piano bench side by side, her hip touching the solid line of the chair. He lifted the fallboard, placed his fingers, and tried the melody that had haunted them. The first measures held. The second leaned. She steadied it with a hand to his shoulder. He reached the third and did not fail. The chord resolved and lingered, a note hanging in air until it chose to become memory. That, she whispered, eyes wet. That's the man I married. Then that's the man I'll be, he said. They worked. Miriam appeared with 3 memoranda folded into separate folders, each bearing a cover sheet with baked-in invisible ink and a deliberate typo. One memo proposed selling a charitable wing Martin had helped found. Just a rumor of it, enough to curl his lip. Another suggested bringing in a PR chair to reshape the company's human narrative, an invitation designed to taste like candy to Vanessa. A third proposed streamlining compliance oversight under a new efficiency czar, Victor's dream fraternity. Send them at staggered times, Miriam said. Let each think they're special. Then we watch the pings. Ethan sent the emails from his office, each under separate privilege notes, each to one person only. The sting token glowed once, then twice, and at last thrice as each memo took a path into the wrong hands. The first ping left Martin's assistant's desktop to a private account under a fake name, Oak Leaves. The second flew for Vanessa's work address to a burner Gmail that lived in a folder called Press Dossier. The third hopped from Victor's machine to a PR lobbyist's secure message portal. Gail wrote down the IPs and smiled like a man watching fishermen who didn't know they'd already swallowed the hook. If you had to catch a traitor, would you risk revealing a secret that could hurt you too? Drop your take in the comments. Someone here might need your courage to do the right thing. At dusk, Gail's team set the garage stage. A maintenance sign appeared at the south lift. A cleaning cart blocked the usual path. A midnight audit email slipped out to Victor's admin from a spoofed internal address that would terrify an amateur and bother a professional. The retired cop took position in stairwell C with a camera. Another in stairwell F. Gail sat in a sedan with a screen on his lap. Radio turned low. Midnight, a soft-bellied hour. A man in a counterfeit Arrowhead jacket appeared on the feed, clipboard under his arm, gate favoring the left. He checked a panel with theatrical care, then moved toward a maintenance cabinet. 20 seconds later, a second figure entered through the fire door. A woman in a baseball cap and office heels who walked like she was late to a meeting. She handed the man a thin envelope. He handed her a flash drive. Their bodies blocked the camera for 3 seconds by accident too perfect. Freeze, Gail murmured. He ran a software enhancement that respected the grain and gently asked it for more. The cap's brim lifted enough to show a jawline. Vanessa. The man looked up to adjust his collar. A scar ran from the corner of his mouth to his jaw, the shape of a fishhook. Gail made a low sound. Rex Morrow, he said. Facility tech, fired 5 years ago for altering time cards, rehired by Redline on a contract last quarter. Guess who pushed Redline through procurement? He tapped a line on his pad. Victor's office. Chain it, Miriam said. We need hands, faces, and a timeline with fewer adjectives than a press release. They watched the pair split. Vanessa left via stairwell F, phone lit, typing. The sting token pinged again. An embargoed memo had hit a journalist's mailbox tagged urgent. Gail called the judge he'd been polite to for 2 decades and cashed in half of a kindness. A midnight warrant began to write itself on a pale blue form. At the river house, Ethan paced the study with his chair because the body requires motion when waiting would crush it. Amelia made tea she did not intend to drink. She opened her notebook and wrote a list titled Truths That Hold Under Pressure. She wrote, he does not break promises to me. She wrote, I can walk into a room and not apologize for breathing. She wrote, they're not stronger than what we are. Gail's text arrived at 1:30. We have faces, a name, a transfer path, and a judge awake. Sit tight. In 2 hours, I'll have paper with signatures on it. They did not attempt sleep. They sat with their shoulders touching and let the quiet of the house do what it had not been able to do for days, steady them. At dawn, the city wore its cleanest light, as if what had happened in the dark could be rinsed. Gail called at 6. Warrants are in motion, he said. Police are on their way to a storage unit rented by Redline under an LLC we can tie to Martin's foundation. If we're lucky, we'll find more than a clipboard. And Vanessa's office server is being imaged under subpoena. Your edited clip will be there. They never believe metadata hurts. Martin, Ethan asked, the name is Stone. Not yet, Gail said. He has buffers. But we're through the first circle. Keep yourself clean. Today, Amelia asked. Today, Miriam said, already riffling a set of papers she had kept dry under her jacket. You two go do exactly what will make them furious. You show up with her no cameras and leave a different record. You promise those kids a visit. You keep it. In the afternoon, we sit with the hospital's communications head and prepare one statement. Not to the gossip mills, but to the families who walk past your name on a wall. Tonight, we bring all of this to the committee in an emergency session. We force minutes. We force votes. They drove to the children's wing with the back entrance nurse waiting, 2 crafts carts prepped, a stack of coloring pages that made no mention of stocks or subpoenas. Amelia sat cross-legged on the floor with a girl whose four-pole wore a paper crown. Ethan let a boy in a Captain Astro pajama set paint a galaxy on his forearm. The boy asked, do wheelchairs go faster if they're black? And Ethan answered, solemn, only if you tighten the stars. The head nurse watched from the doorway with an expression that had forgiven no one, but still chose to welcome everyone. When they left, she hugged Amelia as if she had hugged many mothers through many midnights. You could have given up, she said. You came. In the car, Amelia pressed her fingertips to her eyes. Is this what winning feels like, she asked. No, Ethan said. This is what not losing feels like until we can call it by its name. At 2, Miriam met them in a conference room that smelled of coffee and caution. She laid 3 printouts in a neat row, a still of Vanessa's hand passing the envelope, a still of Rex Morrow's scarred jaw, a ledger page showing a wire from Oak Leaves Foundation to Redline Industrial Services labeled Holiday Boiler Tune. The judge-approved seizure, she said. Storage unit contained tools, a counterfeit arrowhead patch kit, and a notebook with meetings logged by date. 2 entries correspond to your crash week. One has the initials VA, Vanessa, next to it. Another has MB. We'll need to argue that's Martin Blackwell, not Maintenance Bay. And Victor? Ethan asked. His fingerprints are on the procurement fast track for Redline, Miriam said. He'll say he delegated. He always does. But the committee will recognize proximity. And our honey tokens hit pay dirt. 3 leaks in 3 hours. I emailed each offender their own watermark printout. No one can blame a phantom intern. At 6, the emergency session convened in a boardroom that finally felt too small for the fiction it had tried to hold. Victor arrived 10 minutes late, tie straight, eyes guarded. Vanessa wore grief in a black dress and forgot to hide thrill in her pupils. Martin held a folded newspaper under his arm, like a prop from a play that had run out of new lines. Miriam set a neat stack of binders at each seat. Before any of you speak, read, she said, tone making pleas obsolete. Photos, affidavits, chain of custody reports, a judge's signature, an evidence list that didn't need a focus group to write it. Victor's jaw moved. Vanessa's nails worried at the seam of her leather folder. Martin's eyes glanced at Ethan, then away, then back. He cleared his throat with ceremony. All very dramatic, he said. But surely, Miriam cut in. You want to confirm the memo you sent to the press 23 minutes after receiving it? Your copy carries the typo stabilized with one eye. The article carries that too. She slid a page. And Vanessa, your server logs show an export of a composite video file to a freelance editor 2 days before the anonymous leak. The editor's invoice lists coat, swap, timestamp skin, color adjustment. The subject line reads, Blackwell bride. That's ugly work. That's not optics. That's a knife. Vanessa's face shifted once, the way a mask cracks. You think you can accuse me in public and walk away unscratched? She asked, voice sugar-edged. Miriam did not look away. We are not in public, she said. We are on the record. Martin leaned back and sneered so slightly you had to be looking for it. You've always been a dramatist, nephew, he said to Ethan. You'll burn your own home to prove you can light a match. I almost died because someone cut my brakes, Ethan answered. You didn't call for weeks. You sent flowers and a note that used the word resilient like a curse. If you wanted my seat, you could have asked. You didn't have to hire men who talk to thermostats. Martin's smile faltered, only for a second. It was enough. Ethan looked down the table at the faces of people who had smiled and smiled and smiled. Here is my motion, he said, that the interim oversight be rescinded pending the court's review in light of newly discovered evidence of sabotage and deliberate misinformation. That this board vote to refer the matter of Redline Industrial Services, Verilux Media's edits, and the Oak Leaves Foundation's wires to law enforcement immediately. And that any member of this committee who leaks privileged documents be censured and suspended pending inquiry. Victor let out a breath that sounded like a laugh someone had told not to laugh. You don't have the votes, he said. Maybe not yesterday, Ethan returned. Maybe not at 9 this morning. You should speak to the hospital families who received an unedited letter from me and not a press statement, and to the 600 employees who signed a petition asking that their leadership stop playing with gasoline. People are watching, and not the ones with microphones. A junior board member, new, careful, eyes bright with the righteousness of someone not yet exhausted by cynicism, raised her hand. I've read the binders, she said. I vote yes. A second member, older, who had lost a brother in an accident no one bothered to investigate, lifted his chin. Yes. Votes moved around the table like weather front lines you can feel before you see the rain. Victor's hand rested on his folder as if it could hold back tide. Vanessa stared at Miriam with hate that had nowhere useful to go. Martin closed his eyes and did the math on his fingers, as if numbers on his own knuckles could lie for him. The count tallied. Not unanimity, not safety, but enough. The motion carried. Ethan exhaled. It did not feel like victory yet. It felt like air returning to a room. He turned to Amelia, who sat at the end of the table, not because she needed the position, but because the shape of the room finally included her. She met his gaze without apology. Tomorrow, he said, voice steadier than it had any right to be, we go to the police with this. Tonight, we go home. Home, she echoed, and the word felt like a bridge they had spent months learning to build without blueprints. They stepped in the hall together, and the world, hungry and ready, breathed against the glass. They would still have to face cameras, edit bays, headlines that pretended objectivity. They would still have to pry every wire loose. But the path ahead had changed directions because they had chosen, in the hour that asked the most, to trust each other enough to be brave in public and tender in private. In the elevator, the doors slid shut. Their reflections stood side by side in the gold-tinged glass. He reached for her hand. She didn't make him beg for it. He squeezed in a rhythm that used to carry runners around a track. She answered with a pressure that let him know she understood the pace. Tomorrow will be hard, he said. Today was harder, she replied. We haven't won, he said. We've stopped losing, she corrected. When the doors opened on the lobby, the air tasted like rain that hadn't fallen yet. The city, unbothered by their personal storms and somehow remade by them anyway, waited. They stepped forward, not toward the microphones, not toward the marble that asked them to pretend, but toward a night that still held work and a piano that would require both hands and a promise. They will make it on both. The morning Miriam texted me one word, closed. The light over the river looked like a clean page. No trumpets. No headline that got it right without cutting something in half. Just sunlight lifting the color from the water and the kettle whistling in our kitchen like relief remembered how to boil. I stared at the message for a long minute. Then I set the phone face down, rolled to the window, and let the truth land the way it deserved to. Not like a victory lap, but like oxygen. We'd done it. Not because the world suddenly believed, but because facts had found their place and held. Behind me, I heard Amelia pad in from the hallway, her hair sleep-tangled, the imprint of her pillow still soft on her cheek. She was wearing one of my shirts. That shouldn't have undone me the way it did. It did anyway. Good news? She asked, voice a thread. I turned the phone so she could see. She crossed the room and set the back of her hand against my jaw like she was checking for fever, then leaned down and kissed me with something I still hadn't learned how to deserve except by living it. When she straightened, there was laughter building in her chest, the kind that sets a house right just by being in it. Closed, she said. I want that word framed. We'll put it next to your mother's ring, I told her. 2 artifacts of impossible things. We made breakfast together. Coffee, eggs with too much pepper, strawberries cold enough to wake teeth, and ate at the island where a stone paperweight once held a letter that felt like goodbye. The stone was still there, but the letter beneath it had changed. The amended trust, signed and filed. No clause about marriage. No leash attached to love. I had asked Miriam to bring the original document by, so I could slice it across the line that tied my home to my job. I kept the strip I cut off and tucked it in a drawer that used to hold cufflinks and now holds better choices. At 10, the court's independent monitor came by for one final walkthrough. She took notes in a small, battered notebook, asked 3 dry questions that mattered, and shook my hand like we both passed a class neither of us wanted to take. Systems are sound, she said. Keep them that way. People relax after storms. Don't. We won't, I said. Especially you, she added, eyes making the comment gentler than the words. You're useful when you remember you're not the only fire in the room. When she left, the river house exhaled. Walls remember pressure. They notice when it changes. So do people. I spent the early afternoon signing things that meant something again. Vendor codes rewritten so one gatekeeper couldn't turn a bad idea into a purchase order. A scholarship fund for maintenance workers' kids that would send 2 of them to the trade school of their choice. A bonus I'd refused redirected to the clinic that had taken care of Amelia's mother on a night when kindness needed staffing. I sent an email to every building with my name on it. You do work that keeps people safe. You deserve better stewardship. You'll get it. At 3, Martin called. I looked at the screen until the ring stopped. Then I called him back. He answered from a room with echoes, club, empty dining room, someplace that smelled like wood polish, and the kind of regret that is good lighting. Ethan, he said, and made my name sound like a negotiation. You've had your theater. It wasn't theater, I said. It was work. I have never been your enemy, he said. You paid for the man who cut my brakes, I said evenly, because facts are kindness if you hold them steady. You told yourself the wind would do the rest. You were wrong. Silence. Then the smallest crack in a voice that taught me how to detect fear and profit from it. You think I meant to kill you? I think you meant to move me out of the way, I said. And you told yourself that whatever happened would be something you could frame as fate. I took a breath. I won't spend the next 10 years trying to make you answer a question you won't answer honestly. I'm not calling to punish you. I'm calling to put a boundary where you kept a door. You don't get to name me anymore. And you don't get to use my love of this company against me. We're done. He made a small sound, some mixture of scoff and surrender. You sound like your father, he said. I hope so. I answered and ended the call. I expected shaking. It didn't come. Just a quiet that wasn't empty. Just space. When I turned, Amelia was leaning on the doorframe, watching me with that gaze she uses when she's taking a picture of her mind. You okay? She asked. I'm new, I said because that was as close as language could get to it. Stay with me while I figure out how to be this person. She crossed the room and kissed my forehead. I'm not going anywhere. Evening, we went to see her mother. We didn't sneak in the back this time. We brought bread like she asked and a ridiculous amount of jam someone at the market insisted would change our lives. Mrs. Hart opened the door before we knocked, her face lighting in a way that felt like the city got brighter by copycatting her. Let me see the ring again, she demanded before we were 3 steps inside. She held Amelia's hand in both of hers, then looked at me with mischief. If you break her heart, I'll break your chair and make you walk. I believe you, I told her, and meant it as a compliment. We ate soup that tasted like every good winter I never had time to notice before. The television played a drama with too much music. At the commercial break, Mrs. Hart turned it down, folded her hands, and said, I'd like to throw your wedding in the community hall. Mom, Amelia laughed, half protest, half prayer. You think you need a glass building and famous flowers? Her mother said. You don't. You need a floor I can sweep myself, and a place where the kids can run without an usher shushing them. I looked at Amelia. She looked back with eyes that already held that room. Okay, we said together. The next weeks passed in a way I still don't have clever words for. Not fast, not slow, just right. The DA filed charges. Rex flipped and told stories about envelopes handed in garages. Vanessa discovered that the angle of her jaw didn't impress a judge. Victor's resignation turned into a lateral hire at another firm with a press release that strung empty words like beads. The Independent Monitor published a report dry enough to cure vanity. It was perfect. We rebuilt protocols with the dull, daily patience of people who were serious this time. I went to job sites again, and for the first time in months, no one tried to hide the mess before I arrived. Mess is how we find where the work is. I hadn't let myself admit how much I missed it. On Sundays, we visited the hospital wing. The staff opened a cupboard and pulled out the keyboard they'd started calling Ethan's. I still can't decide if that embarrasses me. It probably should. It doesn't. Kids in paper crowns demanded songs. I learned to play the theme from Captain Astro one-handed while a 6-year-old tapped the bass line with an index finger that might someday be a surgeon's. I played the melody I wrote by accident. Minor first, then the corner, then the light, and watched the way it made a room change shape. At night, at home, I practiced other kinds of getting better. I asked for help when I needed it. I apologized without attaching a comma and a justification. I stopped pretending the chair wasn't in the room. I stopped letting it be the only thing in the room. I told Amelia where it hurt when it hurt. Sometimes she fixed it. Sometimes she just listened, which is its own medicine. Sometimes she laughed at me in a way that made me laugh at myself, which is how pride learns to go to bed without a fight. We planned a wedding that made sense for us. No PR team. No seating chart designed by fear. The community hall's floor creaked in all the right places. Mrs. Alvarez reserved the back row for gossip and wore a hat that could shelter 3 people in a drizzle. The boy in Captain Astro pajamas insisted on wearing a tie and carried the rings in a lunchbox because he said pillows are for naps, not missions. The head nurse from the children's wing sat next to the man who changes light bulbs at the tower and never gets thanked for it. Many people brought food. Too many people brought cake. There is no such thing as too many people bringing cake. I didn't write vows that were clever. I wrote vows I could keep. I promised to choose curiosity over certainty. I promised to speak the worst thing first. I promised to remember that my job is built on hands I will never shake, and my home is built on one hand I hope to hold when I'm an old man who complains about the price of strawberries. I promised to let her braid my stubbornness into something useful. When it was Amelia's turn, she reached into the pocket of her dress and pulled out a folded scrap of paper that looked like it had ridden around with her for weeks. I wrote this the morning after you said love into a microphone. You didn't know anything, she said. I wrote, don't let him become what almost killed him. I promised myself I would not love you in his safety at the cost of truth. I promised that now, out loud, where people can hear me, I won't be your excuse. I'll be your reason. I've never been a crier. I was that day. We didn't do a first dance so much as a first orbit. She moved with me, my hands on the wheels, her palms on my shoulders, both of us learning the steps of a slow circle that felt like the kind of geometry you live your whole life to understand. Someone put on a song that didn't ask for anything but presence. The kids decided they were confetti and obeyed physics with gusto. It worked. Later, after too many congratulations and exactly the right number of toasts, I found Amelia in the side room where the coats were piled like polite snowdrifts. She had her forehead pressed to the window, watching the parking lot lamp bleed its halo onto the asphalt. Her profile looked like certainty without arrogance. It still fascinates me. Married, I said, as if the word needed reporting to the room. Married, she said, and reached back without looking until her fingers found my sleeve. We did it without hiring a single violinist. Budget miracle, I said. I'll tell the board. She turned and kissed me the way you do when you're not trying to be a version of love you've seen in a movie. Just hello again forever. On the drive home, the city looked less like a backdrop and more like a place you can live in if you pay attention. The river kept moving like it had a job and didn't need applause. In the house, the first thing I did was roll to the piano and play our piece. It was the same melody and not the same at all. My hands didn't tremble. When the last chord hung, Amelia's hand landed on my shoulder with that weight that tells your body you've arrived. Weeks passed, then months. We settled into a life that made room for surprise. Some mornings Amelia woke me before dawn and dragged me out to the balcony because the fog was doing a thing with the light that looked like a secret trying to decide whether to tell itself. Some afternoons, I texted her a photo from a job site, rebar tied clean, a beam set true, and she texted back hearts and a note about symmetry. Wednesdays, we had dinner with her mother. Sundays, we kept for the hospital. Fridays, I reminded the company that bonuses were a measure of team dignity, not executive cleverness. I fired one person I should have fired a year ago and hired three I should have noticed sooner. I learned the names of the security guards on night shift. They learned to stop calling me sir unless they were teasing me. It worked. One evening, standing in our kitchen rinsing blueberries, I realized I hadn't thought about the interim committee in 3 days. Not because it didn't matter anymore, but because it had finally become a chapter instead of an identity. I told Amelia, and she smiled like a magician whose trick had worked without a card up her sleeve. That's what closure feels like, she said. Not a door slamming. A hallway ending. We never saw Vanessa again. If she writes a book, I won't read it. Rex sent a letter to the DA that read like a man who wants to be allowed back into rooms where normal life is happening. I hope he finds his way toward one. Victor resurfaced on a panel about leadership 6 months later. He used a phrase lessons learned with such ferocity it sounded like a threat. I turned the television off. Martin sent a holiday card with no return address. Inside, a photo of a tree, cut from a magazine, and the words wishing you peace. I wished it back to him, quietly, because wishing costs nothing and sometimes it doesn't return empty. On our first anniversary, contract outlived, promises kept, we didn't throw a party. We took the train to the coast and rented a small place with a roof that clicked when it cooled at night. I wheeled along a boardwalk that smelled like salt and destruction and gulls. Amelia walked with her hands in her pockets like a woman who had finally stopped bracing for impact. We ate fish that had been alive hours before and sat with our legs, mine metal and strong, hers bare and braver than air, touching under a table someone used to paint every spring. That night, on a porch made of splinters and history, I told her the sentence that had been building in my mouth for months. You didn't fix me, I said. You saw me. That's harder. She rested her head against my shoulder. You didn't save me, she said. You made room for me to choose. We sat there a long time, listening to a tide that has never once asked for permission to be trusted and has never, not once, stopped coming back. When we returned to the city, I felt something rarely granted to men like me, men who used to make speed a morality play. I felt patient. I kept it. I try to keep it still. The piano sits where it always has in the river house, wood warmed by sun. I play every night, not because it's noble, but because it lets my body say yes to a thing my mind still tries to complicate. Some nights I'm bad. Most nights I'm fine. Some nights I find a phrase the day didn't teach me, and I follow it like a rope out of a maze. Amelia reads on the couch or edits a sentence in a story she won't let me see yet. Sometimes she looks up and smiles at a note as if she recognizes it from before she met me. It makes me want to be careful with sound. People ask me, still, what changed? I want to give them a thesis. I don't. I tell them the truth I can carry in one hand. I learned to stop performing competence and start practicing it. I learned to stop mistaking momentum for meaning. I learned that love is not a system designed to keep you from falling. It's a person who stays when you do. And if some nights a memory comes back, the squeal of a thing failing on purpose, the way air looks when glass turns to snow, I remember what we built after. Not towers. Not headlines. A kitchen where morning happens to us gently. A list of names I didn't know I needed to learn. A promise that didn't need a clause to hold. If you need an image to carry, take this one. The community hall again, lights turned off, floors swept, my wife standing at the far end with her palm pressed to the wall like she's listening for a heartbeat in the plaster. I roll toward her. The wheels are quiet on the wood. The night smells like lemon cleaner and the paper wrap from bouquets that have already gone home. She hears me coming and doesn't move, just lifts her hand a little so my fingers can find hers. Our arms make a shape you could draw in one line without lifting the pen. We good? She asks. We good? I answer. We are. We will be. Which moment in our journey hit you hardest? The river house kiss that changed our fight, the quiet vows in a creaky hall, or the day we cut the claws and chose each other without terms? Tell me in the comments. And if you were writing your own last chapter, what promise would you make that you could keep every day?